Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll now recognize Sheriff Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for being here today to answer some of these difficult questions about how we're dealing with these populations. When I look at the non-detained docket and I see the 22 annual report said there was a 29% increase, that number has now grown from 3 million to 5.3 million that we're holding on that program now. And what really confuses me is we've got 1.2 million that Mr. Cuellar just referred to. They've had their adjudication, but they're still here. We're not deporting these folks in the numbers that we should be. In fact, in 2019, Arrow was moving out 247,000. Last year, we did 67,000. I don't quite understand how these numbers can work. And then when I look at my Jacksonville area, several ICE check-in offices have significant backlogs. For instance, Jacksonville is booked through 2020, and this goes to the point that Mr. Cuellar was making. Jacksonville's booked through 2028, and that's just for them to get into the court. And from there, it could be several more years before their case is decided. And I think this is just a symptom of just how broken this system is, and yet we don't seem to be responding to it. We're cutting resources. We're not utilizing beds. We're just letting people come across the border. So can you, because Mr. Cuellar brought up the same issue, I want to ask, do you have an average number of times? I know what it is in Jacksonville. It's 5 years just to get seen. What's the average around the country? Because as he mentioned, these folks have got to have somewhere to stay, and technology is not going to put them in a bed. What's the average number?
The average varies pretty widely by location. If I had to sort of guess, I would say it's probably 2 years throughout the country.
That's the shortest?
No, that's probably the average, because most of the offices aren't nearly as inundated.
So Jacksonville is 2.5 times the average?
Florida, I mean, a lot of people are going to Florida. If you were looking at some of our smaller offices in Baltimore, for instance, or St. Paul, Minnesota, the wait time is significantly less. So it's the major metropolitan areas that are going to have the longest wait times. And we think with the additional staffing, CBP actually joining the game and helping process some of these folks that we released on the southern border, and obviously the technological solutions.
Okay, so let me stop you and ask this question, because Secretary Mayorkas was here and told this committee that ICE was removing a higher percentage of criminal aliens in 21 than in the previous years, and got into statistical numbers and that sort of thing. Now, you ran ERO. You know what those numbers used to be. Can you, as an assistant acting director right now, can you tell me how are those numbers down so significantly?
I think it's
from 247,000
I think it's a number.
to 67,000? How can that be?
Well, I think we do have to factor in the expulsions, because a lot of ICE's and ERO's resources that would typically be used for Title VIII removals are now being diverted to the southwest border to expel individuals. They're using our planes, our seats on the plane. So you do have to factor in the 70,000, 80,000.
Let me
ICE
stop you
removals.
though. Those expulsions were going on before too. That the secretary, when he was here, answered Mr. Klein's question. I think it was about deportations, and he tried to merge together the expulsions too, because that's a big number. It was like 1.2 million, I think. But it's all expulsions. It's not deportations. Why are the deportation numbers down so low?
And again, the expulsions only started when the CDC emergency declaration order kicked in. There were always quick removals, voluntary returns, and the like at the border, but not using ICE airframes. I would submit that when you look at the number of folks that we've expelled on ICE air combined with our Title VIII removals, you will see that those two numbers combined sort of get really close to what our removal numbers were in FY19. I also think that there was fewer people that were being introduced in the criminal justice system over during the pandemic, particularly the beginning of the pandemic, and that too resulted in far fewer referrals to ERO than.
All right, I see my time's expired, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank you.